official service didn't start until like 7 p.m. in the chapel, but there were people gathering on the front lawn, and there were a lot of people in a circle praying on the front lawn, and my aunt and I joined them, and it was very beautiful, and you could just feel the love people had. I mean, it was coming from the love of Jesus, but it just overflowed, and everybody was just so in love with each other because of their love for Jesus and the love that Jesus has poured out on us. My aunt actually started weeping, and I started to tear up too. And we broke off of this circle, and after a bit, and we kind of were placed next to this man from Georgia named Greg, and two of his sons and one of his sons' friends. And for those of you who don't know, I lost my brother in July, and it has been a very, very difficult journey. I was already going through a lot before that anyway, and then this just was it's been very traumatizing. It's been very difficult. And I mean, I've still been walking close with Jesus, but it's been very difficult. And I just told Greg, I was like, hey Greg, like, please pray for my family. We've been through a lot. We've had a lot of trauma. And he said, okay. And I'll just warn you guys, like, the story is, I mean, there's some pretty serious stuff I'm going to talk about, so just to give you a fair warning. But I hesitated about whether or not I should share this, but I really do believe that the Lord wants me to share my testimony, because in the book of Revelation it says, they're talking about the enemy, and they said they defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And so I'm going to share it. And he started praying over me, and kind of a backstory, ever since my brother died in July, I've developed this nauseousness that flares up at random points. And I looked it up, and it's a normal trauma response. There's a natural explanation for it. But it also seemed to be that there was a spiritual component as well. It would flare up at random, like for instance, I was on the Healing the Whole Person conference, and it flared up there. And I noticed a lot of times when I was praying, it would flare up. And he started praying over me, and it was just getting really strong, and I literally felt like I was about to throw up. And I just told him, I was like, hey Greg, this is really good prayer, and I feel like I'm really receiving a lot, but I just gotta tell you, just to be real with you, I feel like I'm about to vomit. And now this is heavy, so just fair warning. And he just looked at me, and he just looked at me very seriously, and he was like, was there a suicide? And I was like, yes, actually, my brother. And he was telling me that when he was praying with me, he actually felt a little bit nauseous himself. And he started giving me a backstory. About 20 years ago, he had a best friend who died the same way, and that he developed nauseousness as a result of it. And he said eventually it went away, but that in his prayer and like in his ministry, the Lord has actually given him like this grace, where when he's around somebody who's been touched by the spirit of suicide, it actually like flares up in him. So he told me he was feeling it while he was praying with me, and then when I told him I was feeling it, it was like a confirmation to him. So he actually like started praying over me very seriously, and like he like planted his feet in the ground and like took authority in Jesus' name, and he was rebuking the spirit of death, and he was like, you know, spirit of death, you will not have David come out of him. Like, you will leave him now. You will stop oppressing him. And he started speaking in tongues too, and it was like, it was really powerful. And I'm not lying. I vomited while he was praying that, and I started to fall to the ground. And I imagine like 24 people made this giant circle around me, and they all started praying over me. And I didn't feel embarrassed. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, all these people saw. Like, I just felt very loved. And all these people were praying for me because they loved me. And I vomited like 3 or 4 more times. And I felt like a very like strong like deliverance from oppression from the enemy. Like, I don't want to confuse anybody. Like, I wasn't possessed or anything like that. But I just, I felt over the months that I've been having a lot of attack in the mind and my thoughts, even in my dreams, in my sleeping. And I felt this deliverance and this lightness that came over me, and I was able to enter into the joy that was around me even more, and to just experience the love. And I asked him afterwards about it, and I was like, "What does that mean?" Like, and because it felt like something came out of me, but it wasn't. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but he was just like when you've experienced a very strong trauma, it can leave a hole in your heart, and that on a spiritual plane, like the evil spirits, the enemy, they like to kind of put their finger in the wound and like aggravate it and kind of attach to your trauma and oppress you in that, and because they're cowards and they attack you when you're weak and when you're hurting. And it made a lot of sense because I've experienced a lot of attack over the months. And yeah, so I just felt very liberated from the influence of whatever that attack was. And yeah, like I was just able to enter into the people around me. I was able to be present to the people around me in a way that I wasn't before. And I was very present to people before, but it was just even more. And I just, all kinds of people were coming up to me and praying with me, praying over me. A lot of people were telling me they felt drawn to me and that they felt like the Lord was putting it on their heart to pray with me. And not to get into too much detail, but I've had a journey of a lot of inner healing work that I know needs to go on,